Hello, everyone. Welcome to ACDE 160. I just posted the agenda in the chat. I guess the biggest thing we should do today is discuss potential EIPs for Cancun and yeah, in the context of 4844 being kind of the main thing we're working on. And then on the 4844 front, I think there's two conversations that we wanted to continue. One is just the reorg handling for blob transactions. And second, I know that we have been working on the last 4844 Devnet this week, so we can kind of share an update on that and how that's going. Yeah, and I guess maybe to kick it off, so on the Cancun side, so far we only had 4844, which was included. We had a bunch of other stuff which was previously CFI'd, a bunch of other, even more other stuff that was proposed and still not quite CFI'd. I compiled a list in East Magicians, but maybe to kick it off, I'd be curious to hear from just the different client teams, like, what do you all feel is the most important things to do in Cancun? Yeah, and we can take it from there. I think Nethermind was maybe the only one that answered async before, so maybe it makes sense to start with Nethermind and then others can jump in.
So I think it's more or less what we answered on the Ethereum Magicians call, not call, sorry, thread. So definitely 4844. Definitely we see a need for 6780. What else? 1153. We would like to proceed with that because that was already postponed from Shanghai, and this is kind of ready. So I don't see like much effort to push it out. I don't see a point for it to be delayed. Then in the more maybe state 2537, 4788, and 5920. While like bigger things like EOF, more things around SSZ that are not, if they are not necessary, and things like EVM Max, I would consider for some of the next hard forks.
Got it. Thank you.
Tim, this is Matt. I think from the basis side, that actually mirrors us pretty much entirely. We have very similar thoughts on the list, maybe with the exception of 4788. But other than that, it's pretty much the same list as provided by.
And what do you think about 4788? Do you think it's more or less important than what Nethermind said?
It's similar, like in terms of, we think it's very useful, but the scope wise, maybe kind of in the same bucket as maybe rather like weekly support.
Okay. Anyone from Geth or Aragon?
Yeah, so for Aragon, it's important to get 6780, the self-destruct removal, and I think it's unrealistic to deliver EOF alongside 4844, so I would postpone EOF to Prague. And yes, no, otherwise I think we can do maybe a couple more smaller EIPs.
Okay. And do you have any preferences, or just not really beyond self-destruct and 4844?
No preferences. I can ask the team members more, but I don't think we have strong preferences yet.
Got it. Thank you. And guests?
Yeah, so as for us, I mean, we haven't really thought about specifically what EIPs to ship or not ship. personally, for me, priority is getting 4844 out. So anything large is, in my opinion, unrealistic beside it. Think about the UF. Smaller ones, I mean, self-destruct for sure, and any other smaller stuff, I don't necessarily see an issue with that. But I kind of feel that 4844 should be the thing that everybody focuses on, and the rest is kind of like good to have, nice to have.
Got it. Thank you. So it seems just, yeah, from those four, clearly the self-destruct one is like the second most important, or like the second most, mentioned EIP beyond 4844. And also, so with 6780, we've hired an auditing firm to like analyze the impact of it on the chain. So in the next few weeks, we should also have some data on like which contracts might be affected and whatnot. But I think that's probably one where it makes sense to, formally include it. I see Danny and like Client, you both have your hands up. Yeah, if this is about self-destruct, please go ahead. But otherwise, I think this is maybe one we can wrap up before we kind of dive into the rest. Okay, so I guess, does anyone like oppose including 6780? So the self-destruct in this version is the one where you allow self-destruct only if it's in the same transaction as like a create call, and otherwise you effectively use like the send all semantics where you just return the funds but don't destroy the contract.
Is this conditional upon the analysis not finding anything that we don't yet know about? And if it did, we would at least open up the conversation?
Yeah, I guess it's worth highlighting. There was another proposal for self-destruct that was slightly different. So I think Axic put that one together, which was you do like a sort of fake self-destruct where you actually hide the storage and data, but you don't you don't delete it from the state. Yeah, and so yeah, that would be another path forward. It seems like people don't prefer it as much right now, but yeah, I guess I'm curious. Yeah, from client teams, does anyone have an opinion on like Danny's question? Like, if we find, what would be the thing that we would find that would like, potentially make this a showstopper? I don't know, William.
I mean, it's hard for me to say. I just kind of make a commitment to like revisit the report on this call.
Yeah.
And that seems like the point of doing the report. One is to give information to the community, and the other is to give information to us. So I just want to like, if we move forward with it right now, to make a commitment to looking at the report together.
Yeah, I think we definitely would, at least. And I guess the question is, do people want to make this commitment prior to the report being out? Or I think it's going to take probably like, I think it was like 3-4 weeks. So like, say like a month from now is when we would probably know. Do people prefer to wait a month from now before making that decision?
I think it makes sense to make the decision now if everybody is okay with it, and then revisit it after the report happens.
Does anyone disagree with that? I know Denkrad, William, you both have your hands up, so if this is related to self-destruct, please.
I mean, I just want to say, like, it's very hard to believe that the report will find nothing. Like, I think, like, we're very likely going to find some contract somewhere that somehow will be broken. The question is, like, do we make a judgment call on, like, killing that contract because we believe either it's like so low in value that it doesn't matter, or that the owner can like do something else and rescue their funds and all that. Like basically, yeah. Like I mean, it's just like it's very likely that we'll find something. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's
so
kind
like
of,
if we do start building something now, and we see a chance that like even the discussions might not even go towards like we can't do it, but it might just be delayed because like we need to talk to a lot of people. Then like we should probably design it in such a way that we can ship without that implementation. I think like it should be largely orthogonal to 4.4, but yeah, that would be my comment.
Got it. Thanks. Like client or William, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes. So we're neutering self-destruct because of the unbounded scope of removing all account storage. The problem gets worse in our vertical trees because vertical trees are flat, but vertical trees don't actually prevent code changes. So if self-destruct is modified, I wish to retain the ability of accounts to retain to change their code and also improve the way it's done. I've interacted with 3 different upgrade patterns in my career. I wrote some of the earliest contracts to upgrade with delegate call, and I've written an account ownership system to facilitate self-destruct upgrades. My proposal is set code to preserve that ability if we have to remove it from self-destruct. So that is if we're not doing AXIC's proposal that would just change the nonce of the account and use that as a marker. So set code improves on the self-destruct upgrade pattern by allowing a way to create clear storage or not clear storage when we change the accounts. We don't want to be able to clear storage because that's unbounded. So it just simply makes a way to change code in a safe way. It's as safe as all the other current upgrade patterns. And it should be a simple change to add on to any self-destruct removal.
So this set code, just to make sure I understand, you can change the code at the account, but not the storage, correct? And this means you can like have a contract who's like semantic, changes its semantics, but keeps the previous storage, right?
Yes, that's correct. And this is superior to the current self-destruct upgrade pattern because the self-destruct upgrade pattern requires 2 separate transactions because the self-destruct doesn't happen until the very end of the transaction, whereas set code can happen immediately. This can allow, this is more secure than self-destruct upgrade because there's no downtime where the contract is empty. So you could use it, for example, for a token upgrade. Thank you.
Got it, thanks. Dankrad, Andrew, I saw you both got your hands up. Was it related to this?
Yeah, I don't understand why we need this. Can all this be implemented using proxies? Why do we need another method? I don't understand that.
I can answer that. The main improvements upon being able to replace code in place is that there's no execution overhead. Delegate call is still useful because you can use it to bypass the account code size limit. So if you need a contract or an account with 100,000 bytecode of implementation, you can just spread it across multiple contracts with delegate call. But if you need to replace an account's code itself, then this keeps that functionality. The benefit of having no execution overhead is critical, and without it, many users might prefer, in order to save on the gas, to migrate all of their tokens, for example, to make a new account and transfer all of their token ownership and identity to new accounts. That's not great, for example, if you're a DEX and you want to change your code and you don't want the gas overhead of needing to call into another contract.
Yeah, I understand the overhead argument, but I mean, functionally, I don't know. Like, we should think more about the overhead if that can be mitigated. But there are many possible future advantages from having the invariant that currently doesn't exist, but could exist in the future with this self-destruct deactivation. That at the same address, you'll always have the same code or no code. So we should weigh that against the benefit of.
And I feel like
having.
I think AXIC's not current self-destruct proposal, but the one prior to this effectively had the same semantics, if I remember incorrectly, and so basically what it would do is it would allow you to recreate the contract at that address, but it wouldn't change the storage in the meantime. And the challenge with that, so people were concerned about like their kind of attack risk where, you deploy a smart contract and then, people use it in a way and you sort of change it and you can keep the existing storage and, potentially, change the entire functionality of the contract. So I don't know. I'm curious how others feel about that, because it sort of feels like a discussion we had a few months ago, unless I'm misremembering the issue.
I think from Aragon's perspective, we'd like to avoid the version of self-destruct removal where we have multiple versions, because we already have those in Aragon. We call them incarnations, and they complicate the code quite a lot. So unless we absolutely have to, I would prefer a simpler solution. Like, in my mind, 6780 is a good compromise between simplicity and like limited backwards compatibility. So maybe we can wait until the report arrives, and then we can reconsider, but we can tentatively agree that we are including some variant of self-destruct removal like 6780, and if in the meantime other people come with like a different heap, then we can revisit this. It's kind of it's mostly independent from an orthogonal to 4844, so we can revisit it pretty much independently.
Okay, and I guess this matches sort of what like client was saying, but basically we would sort of include 6780. As we get the report, we can analyze the impact, see if there's a significant change that's worth making to the spec or not. But basically make that commitment today, and potentially change the actual semantics of the EIP if we see something. But high level, from like a quote unquote design point of view, it seems like all the client teams are on board with making this change. Does that make sense?
Yes, to me.
Yeah. Any, I guess, last chance.
Yes, so code mutability doesn't impact or immutability doesn't impact the user space much, because code can still basically be modified via proxy. But what are the advantages of it as on the Aragon side? So you said that it complicated your implementation. How is that when the state root and all should still function?
Well, it just we have this extra parameter incarnation. So besides account address, we always carry this incarnation, and we have to, for instance, kind of have to make sure that in case of a reorg, that we should arrive at like all different nodes should arrive at the same incarnation or like account code version, because otherwise, if it becomes part of the state, then you might have divergent state and so on. So it's all doable and feasible. It's just an extra complication, and the question is whether this extra complexity worth it. But I think if there is another, like, are you saying, I might have missed the point, are you saying that there is already an alternative EIP that solves that is a better alternative, or like are you talking about a new EIP that you have in mind?
So account code can already change on reorg because of create and create two. So when those are reorged, the account code also changes.
Yeah, but with self-destruct removed, we won't have that.
I'm referencing specifically set code as a way to maintain code mutability.
And is it part like is it an EIP already, or is it a new feature? A new idea?
It's EIP 6913.
So I guess clearly, like, I don't think most people on the client teams are super familiar with this. Maybe what I would suggest for this is that we move forward with 6780. In like a month, when we have the report, obviously we're going to have to reassess that. I think that also gives time to people to read 6913, and we could, make that decision sort of at the same time, like, whether we want to change 6780 based on the report, whether we want to add 6913 alongside it. But it feels like all the teams are like pretty strongly in favor of, moving forward with self-destruct removal. And we probably don't have enough information to go like beyond that, today. So I guess, is anyone opposed to that? Like including 6780, we revisit the report, revisit it, in a month with the report. In the meantime, we can also look at 6913 and kind of go from there. Okay, and Marius has basically comments that says relatively the same thing. So cool, let's do that. I'll update the spec after this call, but 6780 is included, and just for the people implemented, be mindful that potentially there'll be changes to the spec based on the findings of the analysis and people's like readings of stuff like 6913 in the next few weeks. Thanks, William, for sharing your perspective as well. Light Client and Charles, you both have your hand up. You had them for a while. Oh, and now Danny as well. Any of you have? I guess,
Sorry, I just wanted to say something before we got into the discussion about self-destruct on like the general CFI EIPs for Cancun. And I would like to look like very seriously at these SSD EIPs because I don't want to get into a situation where we do whatever the like absolute fastest thing is for 4844 with the intention of changing it in just like a fork later or two forks later. So I do think it's important to try and figure out like what is the minimal amount of work that can be done so that it's kind of like future compatible with this SSC world, since that's what we've been talking about doing for a couple of years now, versus like just shipping something in RLP or hacking it in.
I think it probably makes sense to chat about that now, actually, because if we have basically 4844, it's already pretty big. Self-destruct is sort of some medium-sized EIP. And if we do need to make some SSD changes, it's probably good to be on the same page about what those are before we decide about doing anything else. I see. I don't know. You and Ethan both have your hands up. Do either of you want to, share your thoughts on that? And, what's the either minimal or optimal set of changes we should do as part of Cancun, especially given 4844 is like the main thing you have to upgrade?
So the two EIPs that should definitely be looked into are 6493 and 6475. The first of them, 6493, that one defines how signatures should be computed so that they cannot conflict with other chains that may use RLP for the same transaction type. And the other one, 6475, it's quite a small one. It just defines how we want to represent optional values, because 4844 has an optional to, like, for the destination of the transaction. Right now, they don't exist anywhere, and we should just decide, should they be like the unions are today, or should they be more compact or something else? The rest, how those trees inside the block are structured, withdrawals, receipts, and transactions, that we can also do later. Doesn't really matter for 4844. Compatible, like the 6493 is compatible with both the normalized transaction approach and the SSC union approach. So that one, like those three, they are not necessary for Cancun. We can do them later without downside.
Got it. Thank you. Andrew, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so a question about 6475 SSZ optional. So if I understand, if we implement it in Cancun, that affects 4844, right? Because 4844 has some optional, that it's the to address is optional, right? In the SSZ transactions.
Yes, exactly. I mean, right now they are defined as to use the union type there, but semantically what they should be are optionals. It could be that they are serialized the same, that we want that, but it could also be that there is like a minor change. So at the very least, we need to align and switch over to the new representation at the same time for a Devnet, so that we stay compatible.
And does anyone have a view on whether we will need union and SSZ going forward? Because if we don't, then I guess it makes sense to just have this more limited solution for optional.
Right now, we don't use them. There are some designs that may use them in the future, but regardless of that, the optional is a more restricted type because it can only be none or some, right? While the union is a more complex type. So, for example, in the Nimbus implementation, those two are very different code paths. But sure, it could also be that we just encode the optional as a special case of the union. So it's just a syntactic sure to make it clear to the reader what is meant. Right now, 6475 is not compatible with the union because it doesn't emit the selector. It uses the length instead. If it's empty, it's a none. Otherwise, it's a sum. But union also, for the serialization, I think it's a bit underspecified because it doesn't define how to serialize the none value. So yeah, unions are not used today, but if we need them, we need to also decide how we want them to look, of course.
Sorry, I think it is specified. I think it's just selector equals 0 is the none value.
Okay. So a 0 and then nothing else, I guess,
yes.
after.
Yeah. So just one idea would be like if we really like, if we just keep our options open here, we just like we can simply implement, if nobody is using union at the moment, then we can implement the optional as you specified it, with the intention that if we do introduce unions later, that we make them a superset of the optional.
Okay, so the difference then would be, I guess the 6475 would need an update then just to allow for a future extension for multiple cases. But the none value, for example, that one could be reduced to just the empty, like the 0 there doesn't provide any value, but the sum would have a leading one, right? That would be the minimal.
Potentially, yes. I mean, theoretically, you could even, well, not necessarily, right? You could also say if there are only the two options, like none or something, then you also don't need to add the one, right?
That's true, yeah. If it's a none and another option.
I guess you have to guarantee that, yeah, then you need, well, I guess you need to do a special case that the second part is non-zero length. I don't know if that's always guaranteed. Maybe that's always guaranteed. Yeah, something to think through. But it might be possible to make the union a strict superset of what you specified already.
Yeah, another issue is when you update the spec to like when there is a fork that adds another case to the union and you go from 2 to 3, that you can no longer parse the old values with like
yeah, that is a good point, actually, yes. That might be an advantage of adding the one, because then it means that you can more easily upgrade existing SSZ fields with additional options, right?
Yes, exactly. So I will update 6475 then to have the one in the sum case, and the none case I keep empty, and then also change the existing uses to use this type.
And so if we make those updates to 6475, are we like fully happy with this, with the state of it? Like, should we include it, pending those modifications?
I think so.
Okay, so does anyone disagree with that?
And also, I think we will need to update 4844 to use the 6475, right, for the optional to address.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sure there's at least half, if not all, of the 4844 authors on this call. So if one of them can make that PR once we have the 6475, changes done, that would be great. Okay, so that's for 6475, and then there's 6493. So the signature scheme. Is this? I guess this is something we also have to include. Sorry, I'm trying to read the comments. Yeah. So I guess, okay. So yeah. So anyone opposed to 6493? So the signature scheme for the SSD transactions.
Does this create the two concepts of transaction ID versus transaction hash? Or does this only have to do with signatures?
It also includes the concept for transaction ID.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked into this, but I remember being pretty against referring to transactions by this transaction ID concept and it being different than the transaction hash.
I mean, it's the same, like it's just not a Keccak, but instead a hash tree root, right?
The one disadvantage is it involves now bringing in the Merkleization aspects of SDC into the execution layer, whereas right now we don't have that. Minor thing, but
right. But I think we need that
eventually. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe this is like a dumb question, but if the 4844 transaction type is an SSZ transaction, I guess its signature scheme is defined as part of 4844. Or yeah.
It is right now. Right now,
Yeah,
it's just the
correct,
catch-check of the serialization with the prefix type.
Got it. Sorry, that client, you were saying something. I sort of cut you off.
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay, so I think I sorry, I think I sort of misunderstood here. I thought this was also sort of a requirement to get sorted now due to 4844, but it sort of seems like it isn't. So we can move forward
I
with.
mean, we have implementations of 444 right now, but
Right, yeah,
I think doing things the right way is best, and we don't really have the concept of hashing an SSE serialized value. I think that's kind of weird. And so that's why we're talking about having the hash tree root. But once we start having the hash tree root, we start having to have these other questions about, okay, how do we, have the signature scheme safe?
And also for the 6404, if we go with the SSE-based transaction try later, then that one would have the advantage that those hashes and IDs match if we do it the right way from the get-go. If it's the normalized approach, it doesn't matter, to be honest, because the hash is a separate leaf anyway in the tree. So yeah, there's that slight advantage as well.
So I guess maybe a good next step here is we have the 4844 call on Monday. Is it possible to by Monday, like by that call, have the changes done in 6475 and 4844 so that people can like look at that prior to Monday and kind of discuss 6493 in the context of 4844 and basically, aligning those two on that call Monday? Okay, I see Monday's a holiday. Whoever Ethan is there anyone else who you think can join and like make the case for the EIP?
I mean, it's mostly for review, right? 6493, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I guess, do we have to do the review during the call, or could we just?
Oh, no. So I guess, yeah. And we definitely shouldn't make a decision about including it or not in the 4844 call, but I think it's, yeah, if people want to review it and we can have a, first conversation about it in the Monday call, at least, yeah, if people have questions or, thoughts during the review, we can address some of them there. But it doesn't feel like people have enough context to make a decision about this today. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. So that's so we include 6475. And Ethan, if you can do the changes before Monday, that would be amazing. We also need to do the changes on EIP 4844 to kind of reflect that. And we can bring it up on the call on Monday if people want to discuss it more. And 2 weeks from now, we can hopefully make a final decision on this call. Okay. Any other thoughts, concerns about SSZ? Okay. Daniel, you had your hand up for like a really long time. Is it just accidentally up?
Oh, sorry, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted, in the opening when we were kind of getting signal from client teams, I just wanted to say that 478, which is cross-layer, has the support from the consensus layer teams. See it as a moderately high priority to open up trustless pool designs and the barrier to entry to make pools in the execution layer, and that people are willing to get it in. Obviously, it's cross-layer, so it takes two to tango. So I just want to make sure that information was surfaced here.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, I think it might make sense to actually cover this one and the BLS precompile next, because we've talked about them quite a lot over the past, years in the case of BLS, and at least months in the case of 4788. Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to hear from like the EL client teams. It seemed like most teams had appetite for like, maybe if one or two smaller EIPs beyond 4844, self-destruct, and now some of these SSZ changes. But would, I guess 4788, BLS, or I know 1153 is another one that came up a lot. Like, yeah, how do people think about prioritizing between those potentially smaller EIPs? And is there something, I guess, that people feel is like a must-have or, quite important to have?
I'd stop short of saying, oh, I'm sorry, I should raise my hand.
Oh, no, go for it. Yeah.
I'd stop short of saying that we think 1153 is a must-have, but we're basically remains pretty strong in favor of it.
Okay. And does that mean you would prioritize it over like 4788? If
Well, it's already done, so it's mostly testing overhead.
Got it.
For us, at least. Whereas the same is not true of most of it.
Got it. And then Marek has a comment also saying, I guess 1153 would land slightly higher for them. And Light Client has a comment, I guess, from the get side saying 4788 would land slightly above them. I don't know if anyone from Aragon has like strong opinions. Andrew?
Yeah, I think we would do 5920. It's a simple usability improvement. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess this puts us in a spot where like we have, 4788, 2537, and 1153 are sort of the three, I'd say, that are like medium, that like some client teams feel at least somewhat strongly about. I don't know that we have to make a decision about those today, but I'm curious if like are people potentially comfortable with saying like that's all the scope like we'll consider for Cancun, and maybe what we could do is like literally remove everything else from CFI that's not those three, so 1153, 2537, 4788, as we start kind of working on the Devnet and like implementing the rest of the EIPs, we can kind of revisit those three. But yeah, and I see, yeah. So I guess let's just start there. Like, would people be fine for now, like restricting this CFIs to those three? And that means basically removing all the EOF stuff, which I think was the only other stuff that was CFI'd. Okay, and then yeah, so there's a couple comments in the chat about like some other tiny upcodes, like maybe we can add those in the future as well, but at least I think we can remove the EOF stuff. Yeah, keep those three. So 1153, 2537, we're already CFI'd. We can CFI 4788. And then potentially if there's small things or, other additions that come up, we can decide those. And I know, I guess, Charles, you've had your hand up for a while to talk about one of those small things. So if you want to go ahead, we can do that and give context to people.
Sure. This is actually my first ACD call, so I don't know what the protocol is, but so I don't want to derail everything. But well, first off, I think that 1153 and 5920 are quite useful. People are already talking about that, so I wanted to bring up M copy EIP 5656. which is quite useful from a compiler perspective. It would, enable us to reduce bytecode quite a lot, and it also just makes sense to have it. There's call data copy, there's code copy, there's even Xcode copy, but there's no mem copy, and I don't think there's any contention about the spec or its usefulness. There's even opened a pull request on Geth to implement it, and it seemed quite straightforward. So I just don't see that there would be any problem with it, and yeah, it would be super useful.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess we can, we can have that in the list, and we can potentially, have people look at it and potentially CFI it in another call when folks have had time to review it. And generally, we try to not CFI something on the first time it's been presented, just so people can have some time to kind of digest it before. And I saw you posted in the ETH Magicians thread, so people can review it there. Andrew, Dano, I see you both have your hand up.
Andrew was first.
All right, so I just think that because we've been CFIing 1153 for quite a while, and we moved it from Shanghai to Cancun and so on, and it seems to be a small leap that people are mostly in favor of. I think it would be fair to include it, because otherwise we just we've been it's been a lot of it's been a lot of opportunity for people to look at it, and we generally agree that it makes sense, so why not, and small enough.
I guess, does anyone have objections to that? It's true, it's been discussed for a long time. I know there were some people were sort of opposed from a design perspective, but it seems like most client teams are in favor now. Does anyone have an objection or? Okay, so I guess so that means we include 1153 in Shanghai alongside 444 and EOF and 444 and the self-destruct and the small SSD changes, and the potential trade-off there is the two other ones that people mentioned earlier. So the 4788, those would be sort of CFI'd but not included for now. Does that make sense to people? Okay, so we can move 1153 as well to included. Dano, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I am in support of moving EOF out of Cancun. One of the things it's going to give us time is more time to get some core deep questions right. We're still working on questions around whether or not gas observability should be in, and about how Create should be handling, and a couple of other issues. And pulling it out of Cancun solves a lot of the time pressure, so we can focus on getting it right instead of getting it ready for a Q3 shipment. So as much as it hurts, I think it's the right decision.
Okay. Ansgar?
Yeah, I would generally mirror that sentiment. I would just want to say, because I think it's always helpful to set at least some very rough expectations for the longer term roadmap. I personally would prefer if we could at least then afterwards aim to have Prague be an EOF focused fork, and hopefully come relatively soon after Cancun, instead of then basically shooting for combining it, with Verco, and have it be 9 months after or something. That seems because if we keep trying to combine it with another big ticket item, I think it just will keep slipping. because it's too big to basically be the second place in a fork. So I think at some point we just have to then say, okay, it'll get its own fork, and because most of the implementations will be ready at that point, it will just be a quick fork.
Yeah, so I think it does make sense that, think about it this way. I don't want us to commit strongly to something today when we're not even like, we don't even have implementations for Cancun. But yeah, it does seem that like EOF and vertical trees are like the two potential next big things. EOF is potentially smaller and farther along, and it would almost be sort of like we did with the merge and withdrawals, where you have the big fork with 4844 and then the small fork with EOF. So yeah, we can definitely discuss that. I think as like we have a clear picture for Cancun, that's probably the highest level decision to make, so that we can get teams to work on it in parallel. And Lucas, yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying EOF is small. I'm saying though that if you had, the merge and withdrawals, the merge was much bigger than withdrawals, even though withdrawals were not trivial. And it feels like we're in a similar spot with like 4844 and EOF, where 4844 is like much bigger, and obviously sort of can't quite be combined practically with EOF. But yeah, EOF is also big, and can maybe be it's a smaller big thing for an X fork, basically. Yeah. Greg? Oh, Greg, you're on mute.
I am unmuted. I'd like to reiterate just that we commit to getting EOF in at some point. The basic functionality is the same as EIP 615, which I proposed in 2016. So we've been discussing this for 7 years. It's just time.
Well, I think
I've got.
Yeah, I think
I've got work I've been wanting. I've got work I've been wanting to do on the VM for 7 years that I can't do until this is in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, all the client teams are pretty on board with EOF being too big to be included alongside Cancun. I think the strongest commitment we can make is to have it be the main thing for the next fork. But even that is probably not something we can 100% agree to today. And there's some comments in the chat to that effect. Yeah. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much all the proposed EIPs. Maybe to just recap sort of where we landed. So 4844 is obviously part of included for Cancun. 6780, this is a self-destruct removal EIP. We also agreed to include this, review it in a month or so when we have the impact analysis out. And in the meantime, we can also look at the set code EIP, which was 6913. And then we agreed to include 6475, which is the SSZ optional type. There's still some changes that need to be made to that. Ethan will do them in the next couple of days, and we'll update 4844 to reflect those changes as well. Lastly, we agreed to include 1153 alongside that. So this would be kind of the current scope for Cancun. Two things 2735, the BLS recompile was already CFI'd, it stays as it is. 4788, we also CFI, and then we remove all the EOF EIPs from CFI'd. And that's basically, yeah, we should CFI the signature scheme as well, 6493, but we didn't agree to it quite yet. Does that make sense to people? Okay, cool. And yeah, so on Monday's call, we can chat about the 6493 EIP as well a bit more, and then 2 weeks from now we can bring it back up here. Yeah. So Okay, so there were two more things on the agenda. First was also related to 4844, the conversation around like the blob reorgs and the new payload spec. I know Peter and Danny, we sort of discussed this on the CL call last week. I don't know if there's any updates from either of you or, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have an update. I know Peter wanted to spend a bit more time thinking about it, and I know maybe everyone else who hadn't thought about it that much wanted to spend some time thinking about it. So something we can obviously talk about now. We can talk about 444 call. It's a break and change to the engine API if we go down that route. So we need to figure it out sooner rather than later.
Peter, any thoughts from your end? You're off mute, but we can't hear you, or at least I can't.
So,
oh, now we can.
So essentially, what I was saying is that I was working on 4844, but not this specific part, so I don't really have any update.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, okay. So we can keep chatting about this on the Discord as well as it comes up, but it's just something we should be aware of. Yeah, that basically, yeah, we need to agree on a design for this. And then last thing we had on the agenda, so Devnet 5, there's been a lot of work on this week. I don't know if anyone wants to give a quick update to kind of share where things are at.
Sure, I can do that. So basically, Devnet 5, we had a dry run starting last Friday, and then we had the actual launch yesterday at 10 a.m. UTC. We are running this with the 1,000 validators. We have 3 working CL clients, Lighthouse, Lodestar, and Prism. And we have 4-ish EL clients, Nethermind, Ethereum.js, and a fork of Aragon and a fork of Geth. Currently, we have working Block Scout, Workmon, and Istat. All the tooling is coming online now, and we don't have a blob scanner working just yet. But hopefully, it should come online by the end of the week.
Nice.
We currently don't do any fuzzing, but I'm open for it, and probably the timeline for this is, I don't know, a week or 2, maybe more. But I would like to see more clients getting onboarded.
Nice.
We also have the Devnet 4 still running for this, and we would like to shut that off, hopefully end of the week, if there's no opposition for that.
Doesn't seem to be, so we can, yeah, go ahead and shut it down. Yeah, thanks for sharing the update. Anyone else have thoughts, questions?
I also linked in the chat the specs that you would need to do if you want to participate.
Nice, thank you. Okay. So yeah, I guess that's it. Anything else people wanted to chat about today? Okay, well, if not, then I guess, yeah, for the next call, figuring out this SSZ stuff, and yeah, if there's any other, I guess, small EIPs that people want to discuss, this is probably like the beginning of the end for them to be considered. Yeah, so please add them on the ETH Magicians thread, so we can, yeah, so we can keep track of them. But yeah, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.